والآن حضورنا الكريم إلى فقرتنا التالية أو جلستنا التالية. تتميز المشاريع العملاقة حضورنا الكريم بطول فترة الإنجاز والميزانيات الضخمة مقارنة بالمشاريع الأخرى، كما تحتاج أيضا إلى نظام متكامل لإدارتها بشكل فعال. إذن ما هي المراحل التي تتطلبها إدارة المشاريع الضخمة؟ وما هو دور الشركة في تنظيمه؟ حضورنا الكريم للإجابة عن هذه الأسئلة وأكثر يسرنا أن ندعو الآن السيد كولين فورمان رئيس تحرير مجلة ميت لإدارة جلسة تحت عنوان إدارة المشاريع العملاقة، فليتفضل لكي يدعو ضيوف هذه الجلسة. أرجو منكم أن تستفيدوا منها قدر الإمكان.
Hello everyone, nice to see you all today. My name's Colin Foreman and I'm the editor of Mead and I'm based in Dubai. Thank you all for being here. This next session we're talking about Giga-Projects. These really are some of the most exciting projects in the world. We're living in a world where there's massive demands being put on populations due to population growth, and also a lot of challenges with new technologies which are really challenging the way we think about the way we live in cities and developments in the future. So we've got a panel today where we'll be discussing that and also the challenges of how they're delivered through the design, the planning and the construction phases. And then we'll also be talking about what tools and things you can use to try and really effectively manage these projects. And then on top of that, the sort of things that you need on the human resources side. So what skills and competencies do you need from leadership to really drive these very ambitious projects forward? So we've got a very interesting panel today with people from within the region, particularly in Saudi Arabia, and also from people in the UK where they've been working on major projects in London. So our first panelist is engineer Rami Ismail Jelly, who's Deputy Minister for Projects and Public Health at the Ministry of Municipal and Rural Affairs and Housing in Saudi Arabia. Our second panelist is Ian Williamson, who is the Chief Projects Officer for the Red Sea Development Company. Our third panelist is Howard Smith, who's the Chief Operating Officer for the Elizabeth Line from Transport for London. And finally, we have Joseph Gabara, who's the Chief Executive Officer for CAT Group. So, gentlemen, if you'd like to join me on the stage. Thank you everybody for joining us today, and I'm looking forward to hearing all your experiences on working on Giga projects around the world. Perhaps we could start with you, Engineer Rami. Perhaps you could give us an outline of the work that the ministry is doing and some of the projects that you're involved in.
Okay, first of all, let's start with thank you for the harm and the warm welcoming that I got from my brother and sister from UAE and for all the staffs here. So back to the questions. It's our mandate in Saudi Arabia now with touching our aspiration to 2030 vision. Back to this project, which is covering the infrastructure as a MOMRA, covering the stormwater drainage systems, the roads, construction and tunnels, bridges, and also parks and all the open spaces. So MOMRA mandate, it's covering, raising up the coverage of all the infrastructure and, around the kingdom with taking care of kind of projects and quality of projects that handing over to others to use it and see how we can raising up these kind of so most of MOMRA mandate is covering the infrastructure, which is as again roads, parks, open spaces, and the drainage system, stormwater and drainage systems.
Okay, thank you. And Ian, if we could turn to you as Chief Projects Officer at Red Sea Development Company, which I think is now Red Sea Global, isn't it? If you could give us a flavour of the projects you're working on.
Good afternoon, everybody. Delighted to be here. So I'm based out on the west coast of Saudi Arabia at the Red Sea Project. It's sited in between Al-Wajj to the north and Umlaj to the south. So I joined the project in 2017. At the time, Boston Consulting Group had finished a study on this extraordinary landmass, 28,000 square kilometer piece of land that had been demised for the Red Sea Project. The 28,000 square kilometers is about 3 Lebanons. It's twice the size of the Bahamas, so it's an extraordinary land. Its jewel is 90 islands in an archipelago that extend up to 40 kilometers offshore and around 220 kilometers of shoreline. So there's 3,500 square kilometers in this incredible coral-rich, mangrove-fringed islands, 90 islands in this archipelago. We've got a coastal plain that leads up to a mountainscape of over 100 mountains and then a large volcanic region, all dormant, thankfully. And then this hinterland that, it's fair to say, even in 6 years I've been on the project, we haven't explored very much. It's just an extraordinary scale of project. And our focus is the islands and the nearshore developments. So, you know, so it's where you do start, I guess. You know, where do you start on a project of this scale that's aimed to create opportunities for 1 million per year global visitors to come to the Red Sea site? So that's around 10,000 hotel keys. In addition, there's a lot of residential property for sale. That's either part of a hotel asset or it's separate residential plots that individuals can purchase locally and internationally. So an extraordinary ambition. It has an international airport we chose to build to this site to reduce the time taken from guest arrival, trying to get it down to 30 to 40 minutes maximum to get to your resort destination. So truly global resort destination of a unique type. And our chairman is the Crown Prince, and our board is made up of around 8 or 9 senior ministers of the country. So we're privileged to have incredible governance and direction and an absolutely crystal clear vision for the project, which is very much part of the 2030 vision. It's around creating employment. We believe the Red Sea project alone will create 70,000 new jobs. It's around generating GDP, generating wealth for the economy, and that's in the tens of billions of contribution from a project of this scale. You know, it fits fully with all dimensions, and it starts with, you know, engaging with the local community. We've already got a resurgence of the communities in Al-Wajj and in Umlaj. A lot of people directly employed by us, a lot of people directly employed by our contractors and our supply chain, and then just the local economy is starting to buzz. I remember staying in Umlaj in around July 2017. Very small hotel. It seemed like a pretty dead town. No real activity. Now you've got supermarkets open, petrol stations, barbershops, restaurants, cafes. There's a buzz. The whole economy there is generated before we've even opened the first parts of the destination. We've got 30,000 contractors on site. There's a community already appeared. A lot of our contractor base is living in these local towns. It's generating wealth and opportunity, extraordinary opportunity already. But the crux of the development is really about regeneration. So, and regenerative development is something we've coined as a language we're trying to give to a new form of development in this incredibly environmentally rich and sensitive area. We have some of the best coral sites in the world and an incredible abundance of coral to a point where it's extremely difficult to map and baseline the sheer quantum that's there. We have a huge amount of mangroves, which for carbon sequestration is hundreds or 1,000 times better than rainforest in terms of absorption of CO2. And then you know, we have an abundance of sea life and bird life and wildlife in the region. So, you know, generally large-scale developments and the coin sustainability is around doing less harm. It's around minimizing damage is the kind of traditional way of approaching these projects. What's the least harm we can do while we place new assets, new infrastructure into this pristine environment. We didn't think that was enough, and we worked with KAUST, the King Abdullah University of Science and Technology, which is a preeminent university on the west coast of Saudi Arabia, based closer to Jeddah, north of Jeddah. And they brought us the scientific know-how, but also brought us a methodology that's referenced marine spatial planning, but it's a predictive tool that says what will the impacts be of our development in 10 years' time, post-operational, 10 years post-opening to the public and attracting 1 million people a year. And the study, and they supported us on the master planning during late 17 and during 18, and refined where we built, the scale of what we built, based on this marine spatial planning study, which showed if nothing was done in this environment, it would deplete in terms of its conservation value by 10%. So if we didn't intervene, there'd be more rubbish coming on the beaches, washed up from the sea, the rats on the island eating birds' eggs, overfishing, general depletion of the environment. By sensitive and regenerative development, we set ourselves a target, and this was reinforced by the studies done by KAUST and a Greek university out of Athens, showed that we could enhance the environment by 20% from its current baseline. So effectively a 30% gain in over 10 years if we did nothing at all. And that's about more fish in the sea, more birds migrating and landing at the Red Sea, more flora and fauna generally, and we have to prove that by measurements. So regenerative development is really what Red Sea Global stands for. And I was going to major today on Red Sea project, but we have 8 projects and a 1,300-kilometer stretch of the Red Sea on the west coast that our board has entrusted us with. But Red Sea and Amala are the 2 projects that are the most advanced.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting that both you and Rami mentioned Vision 2030, because I think that really frames what these projects are trying to achieve in terms of growth in Saudi Arabia and the sort of overall economic ambitions. Howard, if we could turn to you, you've from London and worked on the Elizabeth line. Perhaps you could explain to us what the Elizabeth line was and the scale of that project.
Yeah, happy to. The Elizabeth line, which as a project was known as Crossrail, is a £19 billion project taking railway lines in 2 big tunnels across the centre of London. So what we've done is take the suburban railways either side of London, build 21 kilometres of new tunnel threaded through the heart of the city, through the West End, through the city, and run a 24 trains an hour, train every 2.5 minutes, railway service through the middle. There are 10 new stations. It uses 3 signalling systems. There's some fabulous new stations in terms of architecture. And we opened last May 2022. We're absolutely delighted that Queen Elizabeth II opened the railway that was named after her. And since then, we've been very successful, and we're just on the verge of having had 100 million passenger journeys since we opened last May. So that's the Elizabeth line in London.
Okay. Thank you. And Joseph, you're a contractor from CAT Group. Could you give us a few examples of Giga-Projects and major schemes you're working on in the region?
First of all, I really appreciate the opportunity to be on stage with you today. So CAT Group is a 85-year-old contractor in the Middle East and Africa. We've been in business since 1937, mainly focusing on GCC and Africa. The work that we do is in the infrastructure, oil and gas, civil, power, district cooling domain. We're the 4th top pipeline contractor in the world. We're 25th in petroleum and 90th or 91st in general contracting. For a medium-sized company, what we do is we are normally partners on mega projects and either subcontractors, or we take certain packages on giga projects. So just to make sure to put the scale of where we stand with respect to some of the projects that we're talking about. But again, we're members of the team. So part of working as members of the team, we need to make sure we understand where the client, where the stakeholders, the vision are and or is, and where what we need to contribute. So today, as an example, we have been a contractor that had taken packages on the master gas system in Saudi Arabia a few years ago, which is the east crossing from Jubail to Jeddah. And now we're in the stages of being ready to bid the next phase of this project, which is another 4,000 kilometers of 56-inch pipeline that crosses from Jubail to Jeddah and then goes down to Jizan and goes up to another area. So this is part of the projects that we have been involved in and we're getting ready to go and work on again. We have been selected as one of 4 contractors to be involved in the development of the unconventional resources at the Jafurah field in Saudi Arabia, which is a major development of billions. I'm not gonna say how many billions, that's not, but again, between now and 2030, it's envisioned to have 3,000 gas wells, several thousand or several hundred water wells, and associated gas plants and water treatment plants that will build it. Again, in Africa today, we are participating in Nigeria LNG, where we are doing the module offloading facilities. In the past, we've participated in building all the low-rise buildings in the area around Porto Arabia in Qatar. And again, these are the type of projects that we do. And these are the type of projects that where we participate with our partners and our clients.
Thank you, Joseph. Engineer Rami, as Deputy Minister responsible for projects, what are the major challenges you face in managing such a large number of schemes, and how do you manage and overcome these challenges?
Okay, to start explain what the kind of challenges we have to start the part of the mandate of 3 parts that will do the projects, which is covering the client itself, if he has the full capability to issue these kind of RFPs, to do these kind of projects, and also the contractor, the capability of the contractors, and the capability of the manpower that we have. These three main things, I think it's majors. It's a major thing that if you want to succeed in the mega project or any kind of project, as a MOMRA, we start a project. Our project is starting from 100,000 till we reach billions of riyals. So it's a scales of projects and of scales of the mandate of how you can arrange it and manage it by doing the standardization, because MOMRA is covering the whole kingdom. To come up with the good standards and apply these kind of standards with the projects, and also specification and monitoring these standards and the specification that you apply, you created, to apply with the 17 and 200, more than 286 sub-amanas, it's too hard. So, on other hand, we take our partner, which is companies, contractors, to raise their skills to matching with our expectations. Mm-hmm. And in between that and that, we have to have the capability to build the manpower, the main things in the project, which is the manpower to do the standardization and do the execution for the projects, and between that, it's monitoring the project. So regarding to what we are doing in MOMRA as a mandate of MOMRA, we are doing the standardization, specifications, issues the stage gate of project management, doing many things that helps the municipalities in the ground to do their projects. In parallel with that, we working with our colleagues, our partners, contractors, consultants, to show them that where we're gonna be within few times after we do the implementation of these kind of procedures. In the parallel also, to raising up the capability of the manpower, We have so many things that we are working with the universities, with PMI, let's say, with Authority of Engineering in Saudi Arabia, Authority of Contractors, to see where they are and where we are looking forward to be there. All these things, it's a challenge. But with all the support that we got with the from government, we are covering these kind of gaps by doing whatever the covering plan as a project language. For the manpower, we want to get all the experience that we have from the consultant and the contractor to transfer knowledge for the manpower. For the contractor, we are not pushing, but we are taking over. Taking over that kind of headache to show them where we want to be, and gradually we're gonna be there. Also, in addition to that, we are working in MOMRA itself to standardizing the specification with all the 17 amanas, as I mentioned, which we call it amanas, it's municipalities. We do that, and we try to do the quality assurance and the quality with them to make sure that they apply with whatever that standards it's come up or the specification we create.
And do you feel that the capabilities are improving as a result of these actions?
Sure. As everyone knows, the 2030 vision, it's very impatient. It's a project on the ground. It's a people to using these. It's a raising up the quality of life. So to raising up the quality of life, you have to start with infrastructure projects and doing that gradually to reach that kind of level. We are trying to do it. We are with all support that we got from the Crown Prince, Prince Mohammed bin Salman, and our minister, and all the team is working under these kind of projects they are doing, and we are almost there.
Okay.
Hope so.
Thank you. And Ian, what are the challenges that you're facing in the design and the delivery of your projects? And
I was going to start with scale, and I realised MOMRA is dealing with Saudi Arabia, which is, covers a large piece of Europe. If you overlaid the maps, I think everyone underestimates the scale of Saudi Arabia itself. But of course, coming back to this enormous site that was demised to the Red Sea project, it's remote. It's a remote site. It's 500 kilometers north of Jeddah. I drove down last night, 5.5 hours on the site to get to the airport to come over in the early hours this morning. It's 5 hours north to Neom, which doesn't exist yet, but so there's very little there in terms of existing community and infrastructure. There was absolutely nothing there when I got to the project in mid-2017, apart from what's termed Highway 5. Everyone knows Highway 5 is a north to south arterial road, a four-lane carriageway that runs all the way from the borders to the south in Saudi, all the way to the borders in the north, and that was it. Nothing else. Just one, effectively almost like a truck road that ran through 10 kilometers away from the shoreline. No water, no electricity, no accommodation, no utilities of any nature at all, no local roads to get from this Highway 5 down to the coast, etc. So, you start with this kind of fairly daunting, first you don't know where you are, you arrive on site, not quite sure how to get back to Highway 5 sometimes, your orientation. So how do you build? How do you commence? Which is all around getting a foothold, building base camps to house your own staff, to house the contractor's staff, to start putting in the infrastructure, start putting in the road network, start putting in marine access with marine jetties, being able to land on these remote islands that are very shallow waters around. How do we gain access to where we want to build? Engagement with senior stakeholders, on one hand, was made easy by the fact, the seniority of our board, But at the same time, you have to form local engagements with Tabuk and the governors and the Coast Guard, and all the local authorities have an impact on, are impacted by what we're planning to do. Eventually we need an authority, and there's just been formed a Red Sea Zone Authority, which is respecting the Saudi laws that exist and regulations that exist dictated by each of the various ministries, but has various exemptions that apply to receiving large influx of international tourists. That might be around social norms, but there's a lot of regulatory change that are needed for us to set new benchmarks, international benchmarks for build quality, for health and safety, for environmental, that go above and beyond potentially what's set at a national level, that are highly appropriate for the nature of development we need to do. So a lot of work done to put that authority in place. That's a very painstaking exercise, hugely consultative, and ends up getting endorsed by His Highness, Royal Highness, and by His Majesty ultimately. And then, you know, the key issue I think that's affected all of us is affecting us more and more, as the demand side in Saudi picks up with the huge nature of these giga and mega projects, is the supply capability. It's, you know, we're reaching very rapidly a point where demand is starting to significantly outstrip supply. Clearly we had 2 years of hiatus with COVID, which thankfully we've all stopped talking about, but I was looking at some images that appeared on the screen yesterday where we're all wearing masks at some various sign-off ceremonies over the last years. But you know, that put a massive restriction on people being able to come into the country, quite rightly. And then, you know, Saudi's rebuilding its construction and supply chain capability from where it was 5 years ago. So there needs to be a massive acceleration in the able of the supply chain, not just in terms of numbers, but quality, ability, the supervision, the management of that workforce. And we've got currently something like 25,000 contractors working on the Red Sea, and it'll peak at around 45,000. And with Amala, we'll end up with about 80,000 contractors, 90,000 contractors between us. So there's this massive draw, and I'm just talking about two of the major projects in Saudi Arabia. There's probably 100, maybe more. I haven't got total visibility of every project in Saudi Arabia, but there's a handful of huge giga projects, but there's a lot of mega projects, and it's, you know, it's a pretty thin line between what's called a mega project and what's called a giga project. They still take tens of thousands of people. They're in the billions of dollars to undertake. So now you're getting a tug of war, and there's a tug of war from, you know, from a developer standpoint, an employer standpoint, getting the very best staff to come and stay with our organization. And you know, we've grown rapidly to 2,700 people in Red Sea Global, but there's a draw on the entire supply chain, on global consultants, on local consultants, on local and international contractors. So can we bring more people in? Can we attract the international players to come to the market? Are they going to feel comfortable operating in the Saudi arena? Can they form JVs to get established? Can they hire the best people? So there's definitely a tension. There's a building tension and a tug of war going on between best talent that's available. So Saudi's going to demand an influx of a huge amount of new talent to the country, and that needs incentivization. That has to be set up at all levels to encourage people to want to come. And want to come with their families, not just come on a short-term basis as a sort of an expat flying in, and then, you know, then training the Saudi nationals to take over those positions is not a straightforward exercise as well. That's not a 3-year or 5-year horizon. Mm-hmm. There's a 10-year, 15-year horizon to bring people in, give them experience, and promote them through the organization. And I think we've got something like 45% Saudi nationals inside our organization currently.
Yeah, and very much you're not just building a project, are you? You're building a supply chain at the same time, which I think, Howard, is a very different market to, say, operating in London, where it's an established global centre. Could you run us through some of the procurement and construction challenges that you faced on the Elizabeth line?
Yes, as you say, it's actually probably in some ways in contrast to the experience on the Red Sea. We do have, it's a big project. The Elizabeth Line had about 85,000 people in total have worked on it, up to 10,000 people on site at any time. But the challenge was not of remoteness, the challenge was actually of working right in the heart of a major city. So doing things in very small spaces, doing things in an acceptable way to local communities, doing things safely in a very constrained space. So to some extent, the opposite challenge in Saudi. Safety was has been very, very good on the Elizabeth Line, and we're very proud of that. Project itself is a glorious outcome. The main challenge in the project stage was one of systems integration. Railways, a little bit like aircraft or perhaps big warships, aircraft carriers, very unforgiving in the sense of being 99% there is nowhere. They only work when they're all brought together, done 100%. So the challenge that the project experienced was in moving from a civils phase to actually a railway operation and commissioning phase and bringing the complex systems together. And that's where we had to change gear, change some of the people involved in the project, and bring the operator, and I now operate the railway, to the fore to pull the railway as opposed to a civils project pushing forward. So that was the major challenge for the project that we had to overcome, and that's something that applies, I guess, to big projects, especially to big projects that take time and have different phases. So the Elizabeth Line took 12 years from start to finish, and it's probably unrealistic to think that you can have a single management team throughout that process. You need to plan. I think the lesson from the Elizabeth Line is for the change in phase, the change in emphasis.
Mm-hmm. No, thank you, very interesting. And Joseph, you're a large contracting group operating in various markets and on different types of projects. How do you manage such a wide range of work in different locations?
Again, one of the fundamental things that we've touched on is the similar challenges are faced everywhere. One of the essential elements that to be able to manage any project, being mega project or giga project, it only increases the scale of the challenge, is first to make sure that your front-end loading is done right, your planning is done right, the alignment with the client and the stakeholders and the region to ensure that, as Howard said, that you need to make sure that the people that you're living around are affected, the community that is, because you're in a tight city, or making sure that you build the authority, as Ian said. So making sure that you have alignment between what the project team is doing and what their plan is, and the culture, and taking into account the culture of the country. Different countries have different cultures. Even sometimes within the GCC, we would assume that there might be similarities between different cultures or different countries, but there are differences. So from the front-end loading to aligning the culture and the stakeholders, then you get to the point of you need to make sure that you get the right people in the right place. You need to have the right qualified people. I think Ian touched on it, making sure that we bring in the staff that is going to be able to take on the project. We need to make sure that we give them the authority and to be able to make the decisions locally, because they are in remote locations or in locations where they need to be able to make the decisions. Ensuring that communication is always kept on the forefront. You're communicating with your project team, you're communicating with your leadership, you're communicating with the stakeholders. It's becoming very important. And the focus on quality. From my perspective, as long as there is always focus on quality, which is a driver that always we should make sure we keep in order to ensure the continuity of the work that we've done. If we're gonna hand over project management or on large projects, or if we're gonna hand over to a client, quality is essential. Again, when we have multiple projects, and as we have currently, for example, we're running at about 36 projects globally, oversight, ensuring the processes and procedures are followed, ensuring the authorities are followed, and ensuring that we hold people accountable, but more importantly, or as importantly, I should say, we give them the support and give them the recognition. So it's a balance of ensuring there is good communication, holding people accountable, putting the right people, giving them the authority, holding them accountable, but also supporting them and recognizing them. And in the case of Saudi Arabia, I want to emphasize the point that Vision 2030, one of the essential elements of it is the Saudization. And people sometimes do not take that in the really the essence of what it is for. And this is where bringing Saudis to the level of being able to lead some of those efforts and train them to get to the level of being able to take the lead positions in these is a very essential element of what we work on. And from my perspective, this is essential because at the end, the success of the project is not only the success of building it, it's the success of operating it, it's the success of the continuity of maintaining it. And that, as we see, is going to transfer over the years, and that's essential to what we do because I think our success is dependent on that success.
Yeah, that's a good point, Colin. Just this is like an adage I've always had coming out of the Middle East. That doesn't matter if you're working in Saudi, the UAE, Qatar, any of the big hubs of construction activity. You know, the honest proposition for an expat is you make yourself redundant, which is an interesting concept to come into the role. But you should be coming into the role with an exit strategy in mind. How are you going to exit and how are you going to have local talent replace your role is a super important part of the function that you've got.
Yeah, and I think it's very important just to remember that a lot of construction really is a people business, isn't it? It really thrives on the having good people in place. So that engineer Rami, when you have people coming to be managers or directors of your projects, what are the sort of competencies and skill sets that you're looking for?
Okay, regarding to who is going to manage the person or the guy who's going to manage these projects, the first thing I have two things. He has to know that, because we live it now. The vision, impassion, inspire, and believes what he's doing. The skills, the technical skills, it becomes with experience. Mm-hmm. with education, with the training, but to believe that is your skills with the vision and inspire and ambition to do it. This is the main thing that we have to. I have to know this guy. He is in the right place if he has these things. Without, he's gonna do his routine work without any creative, without any outcomes that we are looking for. Now, with the vision of 2030, it's a vision, it's an inspire, it's a passion. So we need someone to apply with that, applicable to do it with the skills, technical skills. Mm-hmm. That's why we are with the companies. The main things that we ask, please guys, take over the things that you are transferring these kind of experience to others to help us in the future. So I think this is the main two things we have, to have these guys to lead these projects and do it in the ground.
Mm-hmm. And Howard, if we could ask you to just follow on from that, from your experience, what are the sort of key skills and competencies you found for delivering projects successfully? What are the sort of the key ingredients, I guess?
Absolutely. You know, we're talking about Giga-Projects here, and I think when we are talking about leadership, yes, people need the technical skills, but ultimately, Giga-Projects are about leadership, about vision, actually about focus on the outcome. The bigger the project, the more the risk that actually people become diverted into small parts of it or intermediate milestones. You're really only done when you're done. So a leader who can keep that focus really, really important. One of the other experiences from the Elizabeth line is that you need to keep a balance of drive, but also openness. Because one of the things that the Elizabeth line suffered from as a project was potentially culture of over-optimism and an inability to pass necessary bad news. So you need leaders who are both bringing drive and focus, but also open to the truth. It's about knowing what you do know, but also I'd probably say finally being humble enough to actually know what you don't. And the bigger the project, the more you need to be open to that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. If we can shift on a little bit to technology, I think that Engineer Rami, if I could start with you, what sort of technological tools and techniques are you using at the ministry to help deliver your projects?
In MAMRA, we are considered the technology to involve on creativity. So most of the people, they think that when we say the infrastructure, it's kind of build people and material without using technology, which is wrong. To do the material in the right place, with the right way, in the right, with good quality, you have to, in these 3 steps between them, you have to come every day. We have to come up with the new things. Overall, you have to follow these kind of steps, how they are doing, how they applying, how they executing these things, these projects, these tasks, these mandates. So it's a program, it's equipment, it's skills for the people, technology using between that, creativity to use these kind of material with these kind of place. It's many things. It's a mix between a lot of things that we can use it. But again, the technology, it's a main thing to following all these steps to be in the track, which is the main, let's say this is the main goals of to be a project management.
Mm-hmm.
To hit the target with the time, with the budget, with the quality.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And Joseph, perhaps if I could turn to you as a contractor, what new technologies are you using on Giga-Projects, and also what things are you looking to use in the future? I mean, the technology space is a rapidly evolving one.
So I think over this forum, we've heard a lot, and Rami just mentioned the importance of some of the planning, some of the project management technologies that we've heard about, agile, lean, we've heard about. One of the things that, from a construction perspective, what we also have been focusing on is some of the areas of technology that's leading to being more sustainable as a business. So for example, we use labor and equipment, heavy equipment. If we burn diesel in a significant amount every day. So making sure that we start looking at technologies of how we can transfer some of these heavy equipment to hybrid solutions, electric solutions, hydrogen solutions is part of what we're evaluating, and when is that technology going to be available. Part of the challenges that come with that is, especially if you're doing a 500-kilometer pipeline, is where is your power plant that's going to recharge the batteries at night? Or if you're working 24/7, can you remove the batteries and put them back? That's why, can you deliver hydrogen the same way you can deliver diesel? So that's one aspect of it. The second aspect of it is robotics. We currently are applying safety systems that help us or safety recognition systems that allow us to make sure that we take people out of harm's way and at the right time. We're currently applying vehicle machinery monitoring systems to ensure that the operator is operating an equipment and it is in a good shape and we know what is happening. However, when you get to a point, there are certain activities that you can do remotely using remote operation of vehicles or remote operation with robotics to be able to not put a person in a harm's way, or whenever you have a repetitive task, that you can do it more efficiently. So these are where I see the future, and that's where we need to continue working towards. I think as a construction industry today, from my eyes, we're behind in that area.
Yep.
And I think we should all look at how we can join hands to, not hold hands, join hands to improve on this area.
Yeah, I think that's we're rapidly running out of time, but I think that's a very good point to end on, that there's a future and the industry is behind and does have a lot of catching up to do. Perhaps if I could ask you all just very quickly to just maybe give one last piece of advice on managing Giga-Projects before we wrap up. If we start with you, Engineer Rami.
If there's a last thing that I have to say, it's keep up with whatever in the ground and try to develop these things. This is the project management zero steps to go another step. So try to keep yourself aware what's going on around, because the project every day there is a new in the projects. The projects itself, and there is a material or the equipment itself in the projects. They're gonna create new things. So just keep up with that things.
Okay, and quickly, Howard, if your final word.
Retain a focus on the ultimate outcome, retain an international perspective. The bigger the project, the more necessary to learn from other people in the global world.
And Ian?
I'm with Howard. Laser focus on the mission, on the vision. You have to get back to it. You can get down in the weeds and you lose sight of it. You have to get comfortable to immerse on these mega projects. You know, you have to feel comfortable that largely, I feel generally I'm under the water. I come up and I gulp air occasionally, then I go back under the water, and you just have to deal with it. It's the volumes of communication information are extraordinary. You know, tens and tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, and you just have to accept that's what it is. So you have to immerse, you have to focus, and you have to stay agile. Problems arise, and to Howard's point, you don't want to sweep them under a rock. You need to get them exposed and share them, more brains on the problems. So.
Okay, and Joseph?
I think to add to what was shared, I would say focus on the risks, always have the what-ifs in your mind, address the what-ifs on a regular basis. What if this happens, so that, because at the end of the day, you know what your overall process is, you know where your milestones is. What's holding you from getting there is the what-ifs that's going to happen, or the risks that are going to happen along the way. So keep focus on the risks and the what-ifs, and address them as you go, so that you can get there.
Okay.
And retain your sense of humor, I think.
With that, thank you very much, gentlemen. Engineer Rami, Howard, Ian, and Joseph, thank you very much for your time and your insights. I hope it was valuable for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.